Oh, it says live now.
Oh, here we are. Hey, how's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Sinister the Gamer section, bringing you with another interview with the dev. But before we begin, I hope you enjoy our content. Well, enjoy this interview. If you have any questions, like for the dev, just be sure to drop it in the chat below. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and our guest let him introduce himself.
I'm Sam Valley. I'm a developer for Ultra Pro Wrestling. I started a company called Hyper Focus Games, and we are developing a wrestling game, Ultra Pro Wrestling. I don't know if anyone in the audience would have seen the trailer, but we released the trailer. God, when was that? Is that a month ago? Maybe over a month ago now. I can't quite remember. It's been kind of chaos since then.
Oh yeah, I saw the trailer for it. I was like, oh man. Of course, we'll discuss a little bit more about it. But before we head into that, what is it that you love about gaming? Did you have like any favorite games growing up?
I've just always been a gamer. I've always had a games console around. I remember the first console I remember was actually saying that the first console maybe was the NES. But I remember one time we had a Commodore 64 at
Oh
home
yeah,
as well.
yeah, we had the 128.
Oh yeah. So I've got vague memories of playing mad games on there, mad circus games, and I think that jetpack game was on there.
Right.
Yeah, but on the NES, I love the Turtles game. You know, the one where it's like you start off the top down view.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that game. Then it just every year, I'd probably get a new favorite game every year, as time went on. So Mega Man, we loved Mega Man. One of my favorite games from back in those days was on the Mega Drive, or I guess in America you guys call it
Genesis.
Yeah, it was a game called Shining Force.
Oh yes.
Yeah, specifically Shining Force 2. Love that game. So yeah, I've been a gamer, been a wrestling fan my whole life, and been a gamer my whole life as well.
Yeah, same here. Been a wrestling fan since the '80s, since '85. Like the gold. Basically, I was like in the golden era.
Yeah, well, the '85 was when I was born. So.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. So I think. Yeah, I kind of was born right as WrestleMania 1, I think, was kind of coming
WrestleMania 1, yep.
Yeah. So it's pretty much since birth, it's been all every WrestleMania, all that stuff.
Right, because my first memories of wrestling, pro wrestling from that era was basically Hogan, Andre, Roddy Piper, Jimmy Snuka, that group. But as far as like guys like Ric Flair, I didn't see Ric Flair until I got back to the States. That was in the '90s.
Yeah, I mean we definitely were WWF fans, but it's weird because I definitely remember we had like WCW VHS tapes. Yeah. We used to get WCW on a German channel where you only got the German broadcast. Right. So it was kind of fun actually because you'd get all the German commentators and you wouldn't understand anything they said until like a move was done and you'd hear side suplex or something,
Right.
So that was.
You probably like hear one word of English out of them.
Yeah, the only German we understood was the wrestling moves because it was the same names. But yeah, but yeah, we were definitely WWF. Again, when you're that age as well, we grew up with the Hasbro figures.
Oh yes,
like good stuff.
I never like the rubber ones. I think when LJM made those, like those big tall ones, like they sit there and pose, and you can sit there and move a little bit. They have like the kung fu grip, and it's like.
Yeah, there's definitely a fan base for those figures, as I've kind of discovered, but I never took to them. I love the Hasbros.
Yeah, me too. It's like, like a friend of mine, he was like, like a huge fanatic. I mean, he had like a collection of those, but I wasn't like too keen of those. Like they don't move and stuff like that. You can't. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my daughter in the background. But
that's all right. I've got my two kids are in bed, and I've got the wife on standby in case one of them comes out.
Oh yeah, good thing my wife's right here too. But yeah, because like during that heydays, like 80, 85, I was basically pro WWF. Like I said, I didn't get into WCW till 93, basically 30 years ago.
Yeah,
because like I said, Flair, Sting, Lex Luger, Vader, Ron Simmons, like. I mean, during that core, this is like pre-NWO days, like, but even before the Monday Night Wars, like, you know, that started off back in '96 and things like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
do you remember?
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was because we were kind of the same, just WWF. We kind of, I guess maybe if there was a pay per view or something like that for WCW, we kind of kept one foot in just so that we were aware of stuff, but we weren't like big WCW fans. And it wasn't until the Monday Night Wars when we started trying to watch both at the same time, which was
because that was always cool flipping back and forth. Like the match you didn't like on WWF, well, switch to Nitro and vice versa.
The good old days.
Yeah. Do you have like any favorite memories? Like, what was like the first like wrestling game that you ever played? Or
I guess it's funny because although I was a big wrestling fan and a big fan of games, I mean, when wrestling games came out, we played them. You know, we played like Warzone and Attitude, and even before that on the NES, I remember playing WrestleMania Challenge. I remember discovering Steel Cage when I saw it on the floor of my friend's house. And I didn't know that it was a thing until I saw it on his floor. And I was like, what is this? I need to play this. So, yeah, we were definitely, we played them. Actually, to be fair, we played the Mega Drive, the Genesis ones quite a bit. Royal Rumble, Raw, we played those quite a bit. But it wasn't really until the N64 and those AKI games. The first one was, you know, it was WCW, NWO World Tour, and again, I wasn't that big a WCW fan, so it was kind of like, well, it's a wrestling game, you know, we'll see how it goes. And yeah, that was substantially better than any other wrestling game that I'd ever played. Like, just something completely different about it. That was my favorite wrestling game. First favorite wrestling game, I guess.
But yeah, because the first one I played was basically on the Commodore, like 64/128. It was called Rockin' Wrestling. I mean, my brother, we were having fun with it, but yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just sitting there just having fun with it. And like I said, then of course on the NES, there was like the WrestleMania, because you know you got Hogan, Andre, Macho Man, like all the big names on there. But
yeah, you know, I mean, I think I started collecting wrestling games at one point, and I think I have that Rockin' Wrestling. I think I have that through there. I've never played it, but I just wanted it like in the collection. I'm sure I've got it through there. I'll need to go and have a look.
Yeah, there was another one on the Commodore. It was called I think I know it had wrestling in the title, but it'll probably hit me later. It was made by Epix. It was in the isometric view, just like a wrestling challenge, but
right.
But I mean, I never had a chance to play that game up until probably years later.
Yeah, like, on the emulators.
Emulators, yep. And then as far as like on Genesis / Super Nintendo, I remember Super WrestleMania. The Genesis or / Mega Drive one was better than the Super Nintendo one, and then of course there was the Royal Rumble games, of course. I was like, oh man, this game is way better because like you had all the big names like Taker, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, Crush, Macho Man. Yeah,
there was one version of those games. I think it's called Rage in the Cage.
Rage in the Cage. Oh yes, like yeah, like all the
and I never played it. But I remember like hearing about it, and it was on the. I don't know if it was at the Saturn or the Mega
Sega CD.
Yeah, the Sega CD, and that just apparently had everyone. So that would have been fun back in the day, but that was another one that we missed out on.
Yeah, because I had a chance to play it a few times. It was like a mom and pop shop. It had like a Sega CD, and that was one of the games that it had on there. And the cool thing about it was the presentation. Like right before the match begins, like whoever you chose, you hear like a little sound bite of them talking, smack talk. Smack talk.
Yeah, they upped the game once they had the CD capabilities. They probably had better music as well, I'd imagine.
Right. Then yeah, definitely like one of my top few of all times is definitely WWF No Mercy. But before we get into that, how did you come up with the name of your company, and then when was it founded?
So I kind of, well, I'm trying to think now because I released another game, but not under that company name. But I think I had the company name before that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not actually sure when it was properly founded. Maybe a couple of years ago.
Okay.
The name basically came from for years growing up. I was told that I had ADHD, and I didn't uh, accept that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I understood ADHD to mean that you just weren't able to focus.
Right.
And I thought that's nonsense. I'm able to focus. You know, if there's
Yeah.
something that I enjoy, you know, like
Yeah.
wrestling, I focus on it more than anyone else. You know
Right.
that I know. So, you know, another example that I often use was, you know, the TV show Friends.
Yes.
Like I became like obsessed with watching Friends to the point where I'd be able to recite like every line of dialogue, and so that was my example of I can't have ADHD
Right.
because I had ADHD. How would I be able to focus on this one thing so heavily?
Right.
But then years later, I discovered this term called hyperfocus, which
Uh-huh.
is apparently people with ADHD, whilst they struggle to focus on multiple things at once, if there's one thing that they're passionate about, they'll put more energy and effort into that one thing than ADHD would. So,
Right. Right.
um, so yeah, I thought, well, okay, that then was the thing that made me kind of accept that. All right, okay, I probably do have ADHD then.
Right.
That makes sense. That when
Right.
I discovered that, I was like, okay, that sounds like me. You know, I get super focused on one thing, and I'll
Right.
spend months on end, not able to focus on anything else other than this
Right.
one thing. So I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds like me. So I like that name, hyper focus. So
Right.
yeah, that's hyper focus games.
All right. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. How did you come up with the idea of the game of Ultra Pro Wrestling?
So it started off. I had a few wrestling friends that I met when years ago I sort of tried to pursue a career in wrestling,
Yeah.
and so I became friends with a bunch of wrestlers. And then one of the companies kind of blew up, and we're getting a lot of attention. Um, and I knew a bunch of these people, and I actually, I won't go too into it, but I helped them out in a way,
Yeah.
which meant that I sort of reconnected with them. And so I just brought up to them, you know, I said, well, I'm a game developer now. Do you ever think about doing a wrestling game? And they were like excited. They were like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's work together. Let's do this wrestling game. So that's how it started. But then, and it started off actually as just a 2D game. It was kind of going to be like a WrestleFest kind of clone.
Right.
But then the more I was working on it, and I just sort of said, if I'm gonna spend a lot of time working on a wrestling game, I'm not that big a fan of WrestleFest. I mean, it's all right, like, you know, but if I'm going to do a wrestling game, I'd rather do something closer to the AKI games because they're my favorite. So yeah, it changed. It then became a 3D game, and the goal was to try and replicate that AKI engine, but
Oh
have the
yes.
company's but have this company's characters in it. And that all fell apart. Where the I won't say too much about the company because I don't want to badmouth them or anything. But yeah, it was very unorganized, and so it just all kind of fell apart. And I kind of thought at that time that people might not be interested in a wrestling game if it's just, you know, a bunch of fictional characters. I thought I kind of
Right.
had to have these licensed wrestlers that people knew who they were.
Right.
So the game, all the work that I'd done for maybe a couple of years,
Uh-huh.
it ended up just kind of sitting on the shelf, and I went off and did other things. Made a website, made a few other video games, and then I guess I don't know, it just hit me one time. I think I was just lying in bed one time, and I was just thinking about the wasted potential of that game and
Right.
what a recreation of, you know, that system would be. And I just kind of thought, well, I actually don't care if anyone else doesn't like the characters. If you
Right.
know, if it ends up being a flop because no one's interested in these characters, as long as I get that engine right, then I'll like it, and that's all that really matters. So then I went back to doing it, and that was about a year and a half ago, I think,
Okay.
something like that. I lose track of time. Yeah, maybe about 2 years ago. I think I started working on it in my spare time for a while, but then about a year ago is when I decided to get the office and try and get more people involved and try and have a better more of a go of it. So yeah.
Just have that teamwork effort, and like just to, push it forward, like probably help you progress it, so that way it probably won't be as strenuous on you.
Yeah, well, I just thought as well that if it's just me doing it, it's going to take a long time. It's like there's so many aspects of game development.
Right.
And if it's one person doing it, it just is. There's no getting around it. Especially one of the hardest things that we're doing just now is the animations.
Yeah.
The animations just take so long, and it's quite monotonous. It's hard work because what we're doing is we're basically trying to recreate them from the actual No Mercy games, looking at them as a reference and just trying to match them up as best we can. So it's unfortunately it's still going to take a long time, but luckily now we're in a position where we've got like 3 or 4 people at a time working on different animations, so that's sped all that up. So yeah, having more people around definitely helps.
That's cool. Like I'm sure, like, when you have the people involved, like, I'm sure they all have like their own roles. Like, everybody uses like, their best skill in certain areas. Like, say like, for example, like, what's your main role behind it?
My main role is programming, I guess. I kind of do a bit of everything. But yeah, I guess because there is work that other people can do, and other areas as well, like the new logo that we have.
Right.
That was I'm not a professional graphic designer, so the logo that we had, I'd done kind of like that's the best that I can do, But then we have someone else comes in and they're professional and they go, okay, well here's what I can do, and then it's like, all right, okay, we'll do that. So yeah, if there's jobs that other people can do, right now I'm the only programmer on the team, so so that's what I do. That's my main role.
All right. As far as like the Ultra Pro Wrestling, what did you use to develop it?
It's been developed in Unity.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they say, "Oh, why don't you develop it in Unreal Engine?" Because that's kind of pretty popular now. And the thing is, Unreal's good, but it's good for if you're going for like a realistic looking game. If you want that, it has like the ray tracing. And it beats Unity when it comes to the ray tracing and all that stuff. So, but because the type of game that we're doing, and of course it started off as a 2D game. It started off very simple, so the game started off in Unity as well. But because we're not going for that hyper realistic look, we're able to kind of get away with not having to convert it over to a different engine at this stage. Unity's pretty much able to do everything that we need it to do. So,
because like some of the past interviews I've done, it's like basically that's been the top two is basically Unreal Engine and Unity, and some use like their own a different software to develop because it's convenient for them, it's easier for them to do, and then that aspect.
If you're a really good programmer, which I'm kind of like, I don't know, I did learn programming at college, but most of the stuff I know about programming has been outside of college, self-taught. So, but I think if you're someone that's really good and really experienced with programming, then possibly building your own engine might be the best way to go. And I think Unity is kind of looked at sometimes as what the beginners go to. Because it is, it's one of the easiest programs to kind of jump in and learn how to do a little bit here and there. But from my experience with Unity, like I say, it's capable of doing everything that we need it to do. So yeah, I don't see any point in switching at this stage.
All right, yeah, because like of course, because you mentioned No Mercy earlier, so because like after seeing the trailer for it, I was like, wow, Well, someone's really a fan of No Mercy because like AKI, I mean, that's like one of the best wrestling games of all time. Well, of course, to me, because I mean, I never like playing WCW versus the World on the old PS1. You know, in the N64, there was like the World Tour with WCW versus NWO. Then its sequel, Revenge, followed by WrestleMania 2000, and of course the best one, No Mercy. Is like I was like, out of all those games that what made you chose No Mercy as the inspiration versus the other games?
I was just always a diehard fan of that engine, and I was sad that it kind of just disappeared from existence. Obviously you can still go and find emulators and play it, but in terms of the evolution of what that game engine would have been, that's something that we never really got to experience. We kind of did a little bit because they took that engine and they went and made the Def Jam games.
Yes.
But by that point, I don't think they were trying to appeal to a wrestling audience at that stage. I think because the AKI games, the wrestling audience for those games, I think it's more of a slower pace. The wrestling fans game, whereas I think they tried to make it more of a fighting game, more quicker, faster, more impactful, and all that stuff. But yeah, and obviously I don't know if people are aware, but they were actually working on after No Mercy. They got the contract for another WCW game. There was WCW Mayhem, which had came out, and AKI was going to do Mayhem 2. And so we almost got to see what that would have looked like, but then it fell apart at the last stage as well. So that's just always sat with me. I've always wondered what would the evolution of those games have been, and also even if there was no evolution, even if it was just those games the way they were, having those games in this day and age where you can play online, because that was one of the things that was so great about those games as well. Like when I first got WCW NWO World Tour, I didn't really play it with my friends too much. It was pretty much just me with the controller sitting in the house playing it and thinking, this is insane, this is such a cool game. But then when WrestleMania 2000 No Mercy came around, and then I started playing those games with friends, and then you realize that how good the game was as a multiplayer game, where if the competition's high, those matches can be just insane. You could play like an hour-long match, and every near fall feels so epic. So the idea of that on an online multiplayer system, like a ranked system, I think that's just I can't think of anything more fun than that. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. And then you also go into as well the limitations of the N64, like because they only had 4 guys on the screen at one time. If you had a remake of that engine in this day and age where you could have like 10 or 20 guys, like it's all the possibilities of that. That's what's appealing about it.
All right. Moving on to the gameplay. As far as like the controls wise, are you going to try to use like kind of like the same style what AKI does, like with the soft and strong grapples and stuff like that, or you're just going to probably do your own flair to it, like your own style?
No, we want to try and be true to AKI as much as possible, because there's been a lot of games over the years that have claimed that they're going to be the spiritual successor to those games. And then when those games come out, you play them and you realize that they've changed. Even if they try and stay true to it, but just change a little bit, it just doesn't feel the same. And so it's hard to get it right. So our goal is to get it as much like the AKI games as possible. And so it'll be weak grapple, strong grapple. But then when you look at the evolution of those games, if you look at the Def Jam games, you can sort of see the direction that the developers might have been going in. Like you can now do moves against the ropes in the Def Jam games. So things like that we look to inspiration for things like that as well. So it won't just be a carbon copy of No Mercy either. It will hopefully feel like an evolution of that game, but not too much of an evolution that it doesn't feel like an AKI game as well. We wanted to kind of be a good balance of what those games were and what those games could have been.
Yeah, it's always cool. Like, hey, it's like you can use a little bit of that, but also put your own spin on it, so that way it makes it feel like it's yours instead of you just copying what they done. It's like
yeah. Well, the funny thing is though, like I think a lot of fans like they don't want us to stray too much.
right,
I think they want a copy. They'd be happy with a remake.
right.
I think if there was a remake of No Mercy, they would choose that over
anything else.
Yeah. So to some degree, yeah, we want to give those fans, like, because I'm one of those fans as well, like, so we want to do that idea justice as well. But you're right. I mean, one of the things that we're doing to put our own sort of spin on it is we ended up working with a guy called Hal Haney. I don't know if you're aware. He's an artist, but he was independently from us. He was coming up with all these characters, and he basically, now that we've been working with him, he's now created 100 characters that are all going to be Ultra Pro Wrestling characters. So we do have our own sort of what would you call it? We do have our own sort of universe now. That's sort of that game engine is the base for, but now we have all these colorful characters, and they're all stylized. They're a bit quirky as well, like, because Hal comes up with these characters, but they've all got kind of funny backstories and stuff like that. So so I'd say now at this stage we certainly have our own spin on it, but in terms of gameplay, it will hopefully feel true to the AKI games as well.
Okay, that's cool. Starting off, like, how many wrestlers are in the game without going too much? Because I know some things we probably want to keep secret up until you want to discuss it.
I mean, our goal is, we want to have a massive career mode, and we want to have like lots of different promotions. So it's hard to have lots of different promotions if we only have like 10 or 20 wrestlers. So we're basically that was why when we spoke to Hal, we said we're going to need about 100. So we have roughly about 100 characters that are all designed. They're not all 3D modeled yet, but they're all designed. They're all kind of ready to go into the career mode and have stories and all that stuff around them. So yeah,
because I've seen some of the wrestlers, like one is like inspired by Shawn Michaels, and I think one is like a mix of the Patriot and probably a luchador, that kind of things.
Yeah, so the trailer was basically the trailer was made before I ended up speaking to Hal. So so all the characters in the trailer have kind of went under a redesign. Hal's basically taken them and put his spin on them, so they all look a little bit different now. But yeah, that was the idea as well for the career mode, to have sort of, we want them to be like prototypes, because as well, like with the AKI games, you could edit any wrestler. I think nowadays, the 2K games, I'm not sure if you can do that. I think it's kind of limited.
Yeah, I think it's kind of limited on the 2K, but yeah, on the AKI games, I mean, yeah, because like, especially with No Mercy, I mean, basically, I went ham, like, taking the guys, like, say for Taker, like, I could take him, redesign his outfit, his look, and change it up, or, do a creative wrestler, just take that look, like that type, and just change it up.
Yeah. And it also, the AKI games, whenever you created your own wrestler or edited the wrestlers that are already in the game, you would play the intro and they would all be changed. Like I love stuff like that, because then you can kind of make the game your own, So I definitely want to keep that element of it. So the idea is that all the characters will be customizable. And then I guess the idea for the career mode is that if you wanted to, you could go and change all the promotions to reflect like the real world promotions. You could create ECW, WWF, WCW, Ring of Honor,
Japan,
New Japan,
AEW, it's like
just create all your own promotions, and then when you play the career mode, it'll reflect that. Then it'll all sort of play out based on how you've set it up. So that's the idea for it.
All right. What other modes on there other than career would be on there?
So I guess career's probably the biggest mode, but outside of that, the mode that I guess is talked about most outside of that is the online mode, because we want to do something different with that. Our idea is to have an internet champion, and there will only be one version of this belt.
Right.
And so there'll be different ways that you can try and challenge for it. We might have like sort of Royal Rumble type, events where a bunch of people who, shouldn't necessarily be in the pecking order can come in, and if they win that Royal Rumble, they get a title shot. And we want to sort of do that with a sort of weekly TV show. So that whoever the champion is, their title defense will be broadcast so that everyone can see the outcome and see how the match goes and all that kind of stuff. So that's quite a big a big part of the game. There'll no doubt be people that buy the game and they don't even play the career mode, and all they're interested in is the online mode. So it's arguable that the online mode is just as big a mode as the career mode. Outside of that, there's just all kinds of local multiplayer scenarios. So we'll have tournaments. As I say, you can create your own promotions, but you can set up your own events. So if you have your friends coming around, you can have a full card that you can all play through, and each different matches and things like that. So there's quite a few different features and things like that.
All right. What platforms is this game going to be on?
We're trying to do it on everything. We're trying to have like PS4, PS5, Steam. We're not sure about Steam Deck yet. That's something that we need to test. A lot of people have asked about Steam Deck. I think it's very possible we'll have it on Steam Deck, but we've not been able to really test that at this stage. Nintendo Switch as well. Like with the AKI games being Nintendo,
Right. This is also going to be on the Xbox, like the Series S and X.
Yeah. Our goal is just everything. There was a guy asked. I think that was today, actually. Yeah, I got a message today. Someone asking about. There's a new platform called GeForce Now, which is kind of like Steam. I don't know too much about it, other than I think it's maybe an alternative to Steam. But I looked into it a little bit. That looks like a platform that we'd be able to put on as well. So yeah, I think just we're going to just throw it as many different platforms as we can. Mobile would be a bit difficult. We get a lot of people asking about mobile as well. But no, it's not designed to be a mobile game. But yeah.
All right, how's it going, Honest Gamer? He has a question for you. It's like, what type of career mode can we expect in the game?
So when we were designing the career mode, I basically started from the idea of not having any characters myself. I looked at it as in like if I was able to remake No Mercy, what kind of career mode would I like? And so I started thinking about, well, I want to be able to play through all the different, years, like, because you might want to play through just like 1994. And as your wrestler, I want to be able to go from WWF to WCW to ECW. That's what I would like out of a career mode. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing with the career mode. You basically start off when we first launched the game. You'll have the 80s, and so the full career would be from 80 to 89. And then later on, when we're able to release an update, we'll release almost like a DLC that will be the 90s era that will add to the career mode. But then it will also, you'll have like a lot more matches, maybe even more promotions, things like that. So the idea with the career mode is you're backstage. That's your kind of hub, and you can interact with other wrestlers backstage. You can decide when to go to gorilla position and start your match. You'll be involved in the storylines. You'll have friends, rivals, and you'll be able to switch to different promotions at a certain stage. You'll be able to go to Japan for a couple of years, and then come back and maybe go on the indies. Maybe go to the big leagues, all that stuff. So yeah.
Okay. He has a follow-up question. So, can you battle all over the area, or basically all over the arena? stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, we're drawing inspiration from like No Mercy, where it'll probably be very much a similar way of throwing your opponent up the aisle, or maybe grabbing them and taking them through the curtain, and then you'll be in the backstage area. And we've got the backstage area kind of designed out. It's not fully built yet, but yeah, it's going to be a very similar sort of idea where you have different rooms. But actually, when you think about No Mercy, when you loaded into a different room, they almost had to do like a cut, because they couldn't load all the areas at once on the N64. But in this day and age with modern technology, we won't have anything like that. So it will be like the AKI games, but there'll be slight differences like that, where you don't have to cut to go into another room once you're backstage.
Oh yeah, like the fade to black just to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I like about the 2K games is like, especially you throw someone onto the table, you throw a grapple, you get them on there, and you're just like boom, just either body slam or choke slam, how you see fit. Just like, oh man, that's how awesome those kind of games are.
That's one thing that was lacking in the AKI games is the tables. Like I know they did have a table backstage. In fact, I think
the pool table.
Yeah, the pool table, yeah. But even in the locker room, I think it was weird. They had like a table, but they had two of them next to each other. I think just because they couldn't have two guys standing on one table.
Right.
But yeah, so tables would be an update, an improvement that we'd be looking to do as well.
All right. Let's see. His follow-up says, "How is the character customization in the game?"
That's one system that's pretty much finished, and it's awesome. It's you can pretty much I mean, you can select every character in the game, as I said, is editable. But it's not just changing their hair color or something like that. You can change their hair, you can change their costume, you can blend their body shapes between we have like a base model that's a muscly guy, and a base model that's a big fat guy, and you can blend between them. So there's lots of room for being able to create lots and lots of different body types. I think initially, before, I was working with Hal as well, and obviously Hal has all these characters. But before that, my thinking was that if people are going to play this game where it's fictional characters, they're going to have to be able to recreate their own and also real life characters. So I want to be able to make it so that you can create Bret Hart. And of course, we have a texture editor as well, which is kind of cool, because obviously we can't put in Bret Hart's actual costume, but what we can do is we can put in that singlet, and then you can take that into the texture editor, and you can just draw on and make it look like Bret Hart. And then we've got a community creations, so if someone makes a really awesome Bret Hart skin, they can just upload it, share it. Everyone else will be able to download it. So it should work out where we'll basically be able to have just about every wrestler that you can think of.
All right. Speaking of presentation, it's like, do you get the options like to have like backstage interviews, like say like you get interviewed backstage, and also part of this is like say like there's our options when it comes to, hey, your contract's running out. It's like you get the option to renew, or they say you decline, you want to move on to another organization.
Yeah, there'll be things like that. It might even be that the company doesn't want you to renew, and they're being awkward with you. So yeah, there'll be lots of backstage politics. The way that the career mode as well, it's not a linear path. I think a lot of games, it's basically you're just almost just watching the story play out, and then you're involved in a wrestling match, and then the story just progresses, and if you win or lose the match, it goes one way or the other down the blend tree. But the way that we're doing it is more dynamic. So like you basically, your character has two different popularity ratings. So you've got popularity backstage, and you've got a popularity in front of the crowd. And depending on what those two ratings are, they sort of talk to each other, if that makes sense. And that opens up the list of available story paths that you can go down. So the idea is that every single time you play the career, it will feel completely different.
Okay, cool. And see, Honest Gamer is he's saying, why should people want to play this game day one?
Day one. Well, I think for me, it's like I've been asked before about do I wonder if like people will just play this for nostalgia, because that's what those AKI games maybe represent to some people.
Right.
But I don't think that, because one of the reasons I don't think that is that the AKI community is still going strong.
Right.
There's people that still to this day play these games on emulators, and they're not playing it for nostalgia because they've been playing it for years, and they still play it. I think it's because they love that core wrestling engine.
Yeah.
So I think nostalgia aside, I think this game engine, I mean, if you look up, if you go to Google and type in what's the best wrestling game, on just about every answer you get, on just about every website, those AKI games, No Mercy, that's going to be up there. It might not always be number one, but it's going to be up there. And I don't think it's just for nostalgia. I think it's because that game engine is so perfect. And so if we can recreate that game engine, and even if we don't get it 100%, even if we only get it like 80 or 90% of the way, I think that people will appreciate it enough to want to play it. And if you want it on day one, get good at the game, play online, and you'll be in with a chance of getting that online championship that might become quite hard to get later on once other people become good at the game.
Yeah, because speaking of that, I know along with No Mercy, since you mentioned like the Jeff Jam games, like I mean, Fight for New York, I was like that was like the best of the three. He's like, followed by Vendetta. Like Vendetta was, I think it was just like you might as well say the prototype, but like when Fight for New York dropped, I mean, it just took it to a whole nother level. It blew the first one out of the water. It's like they improved on the moves, like almost everything you can interact with the environment. It was just so cool, just throwing everybody in the environment, throw them into a pose or a pool table or SUV, or even like those specialty matches like Subway or the Inferno match. I was like, I mean, I can just go on and on, but it's just the way that fight engine. It was like to me that was like the last one. I think EKI did something around that time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did. I think they did do another wrestling, if you want to call it a wrestling game. It was there was an anime called Ultimate Muscle.
Yeah.
So they did a video game for Ultimate Muscle. I never played it. I've only saw some video footage of it on YouTube and stuff. But that was, and I don't know if that was before or after Def Jam. I think it was after Def Jam. But you can sort of see that the remnants of the engine is still there, but they've changed it so much. It's so over the top. It almost is a different game, See, Def Jam Vendetta, I think they still had the ring, is that right? In Vendetta?
Yeah, they had the ring. Like I think they had like other areas, like like of course, like Fight for New York, you got to fight for all those clubs and stuff.
Yeah, because that's what I think they were still kind of trying to hold on to the wrestling side of it with Vendetta, and then I think by the time Fight for New York came out, they probably realized that we're not doing a wrestling game anymore. We're doing a fighting game with that same engine, and so and they opened up to all these areas. And we were just watching the video the other day of someone getting thrown onto the subway tracks, and
you see that cutscene of the train coming, or like the Inferno match, like. Say if you win or lose, you're like you get thrown into the Inferno, and just like you see the whole thing crashing down on you. I was like, or even the Windows match, like with Pro Stage, like when you get thrown out the window, you see flying out there and you just fall to your death.
Yeah, see, whenever I see that footage or like any footage of Def Jam, it just makes me think of like, what could have been, what could have been had they made WCW 2, or had they made like a WWF game or WWE game with that same engine, So it's a shame that we never got it, but hopefully that's what we're going to do, is bring it back. So
we got another question. It's like, if EA asked your team to do a Def Jam game, would you be interested in doing that game?
The thing is, we've got so many plans like for going into the future. Like we're almost getting ahead of ourselves because we've got this Ultra Pro Wrestling, but then we want to do like a VR version. We want to do like we actually want to do a 16-bit sort of Super Nintendo style game called Ultra Pro Wrestling Slam, which will be kind of like Saturday Night Slam Masters. So,
yes.
So yeah, we've got. I think we're kind of we're probably booked up for like the next 10 years or something. Just all the ideas for what we're going to do with this game. But yeah, it'd be cool to see another Def Jam game, especially in a similar engine. You know.
Yeah, because definitely. Because like, I mean, the way that icon dropped, I was like, what is this? It's like this is trash. It's like you basically just moved away from what made Fight for New York so great, but it was just like the person who did the Fight Night game. It's like, look, I mean, the Fight Night engine looked great for that, but not for a game like this. So basically, yeah, it's like people wanted like to go back to the roots of Fight for New York, so that which would be awesome. Like,
yeah,
especially with the same engine.
Was Icons kind of like? Did they make it more like Street Fighter? Is that right? Where it was kind of slightly more not 2D, but you know what I mean, like that.
Yeah, but
it's 3D feel.
Yeah, because like they integrated the music beat. You have to use your beat just to throw your fighter. It was just so slow, and people just jumping everywhere, flipping. I was like, no, it was like it just. I don't like the games like the getaway. I mean, I understand that you want to try something different, not use the same, but to me it just was not the same. It just fell all around. But however, I think a lot of people like. A lot of like I said, fans of Fight for New York and fans of the AKI engine, like they definitely want to see like I said, go back to its roots and still like, hey, come up with being today's times, things like that. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's a shame. I mean, I do it with all the games though. Like even that Turtles game, like on the NES, I think like they should remake that. I'd love to see that game, like
right.
The evolution of that. Yeah, but obviously, yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned Saturday Night Slam match. It's like it was funny enough. Like the person who did the art style was the person who did the Fist of the North Star game. Oh, the manga.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because it was always cool seeing that kind of wrestling, even though it's not realistic. I mean, it's just like it's basically like pro wrestling mixing with Street Fighter, like all those moves and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think they even had some of the same characters from like Final Fight and things like that.
Yeah, Haggard. Like, he was the only guy in there because he was a former pro wrestler, so he was a mayor and stuff like that. It's like, you know what? Let's take him back to his wrestling days.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, really cool. It may have been in Streets of Rage, or maybe it was in Final Fight. I don't know. There was like an Ultimate Warrior type prototype.
Oh yeah, that's a Bobbity. Yeah, he was one of the bosses on there. He was like in the first 2 games. I mean, he was just like all roided up. Like you try to do a special on it, he just roids. I was like, that was so cool.
But yeah, so Saturday Night Slam Masters, that's one of Hal's favorite games. And so when I saw that Hal was releasing all these characters that he was designing, that's the kind of the first thing I said to him was, "Are you just doing these for for fun, or are you being commissioned to do these?" And he said, "Well, I'm just kind of doing them for fun, but I've got an idea in my head about I want to eventually do a video game." And I was like, "Oh shit! Well, that's why I'm that's why I'm contacting you." But the video game that he really wanted to do initially was a Saturday Night Slam Masters type game. So that's where the idea for having a version of Saturday Night Slam Masters with his characters sort of came into it. And what we want to do is we want to have this 16-bit or 32-bit version of this game and have it playable in Ultra Pro Wrestling backstage. So when you go backstage, we'll have like a little arcade machine that you can go up and actually turn it on and beat in Saturday Night Slam. Well, it won't be called Saturday Night Slam Masters, but yeah, same
like
idea.
Your own name of it, like
yeah. The name we're going with now is Ultra Pro Wrestling Slam, just as a sort of nod to Slam Masters.
Yeah, it just brings me like the days of Saturday Night Main Event or WCW Saturday Night, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What? But other than that, that's all the questions I have. But at the moment, it's like, You know, it's like you broke everything down. It's like after seeing the trailer of it, it's like, you know, having memories of No Mercy. It's like I'm definitely, you know, be down for it, you know, whenever the full game drops. I definitely want to be one of the first people to play it and tell
Yeah.
everyone, it's like, yeah, it's like this game right here. I interviewed the guy that worked on it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, the full game that's not scheduled until the end of next year, but
Okay.
we hope by the end of this year we're going to have a one-on-one playable demo
Okay.
that will be able to people will be able to get on Steam. So look out for that.
All right, cool. All right. Yeah, I guess this concludes it. Before we leave out, everyone to give your outro, like, you know, tell everybody where they can find you at.
Sure, we've got a Discord that we're usually quite active on. I don't know the link for that because it changes all the time. I usually post it on Twitter every so often. If anyone wants a link to the Discord, just message me on Twitter and I'll send you. But yeah, we're on all the social medias, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Twitter is the one that we're probably most active on.
Okay.
I think that's where we have the most followers. And then there's the YouTube account as well. We also have a Patreon and what else? Is that it? Yeah, we've got a Patreon as well. If anyone wants to help support the efforts, all the links to that are on, you know, websites. Oh, ultraprowrestling.com is the website.
Yeah, because I already got it on the screen.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there you go. So so yeah, all the links to our social medias on there. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, everyone, like I said, this is Sinister the Gaming section. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Like I said, be sure to like, subscribe, and, you know, hope you enjoyed this. Share this out with your friends. So yeah, definitely be on the lookout for Ultra Pro Wrestling whenever it drops. Yeah, and then other than that, everyone have a good night. Take it easy.